Hello there, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're safe and well. In this video we're going to be taking a second look at the Commander NV400 Eagle digital day-night scope, and in this video we're going to be particularly, amongst other things, particularly looking at the laser rangefinder and the ballistic calculator function, and looking at ballistic calculators and how to set them up in general. So let's roll those titles, shall we? Well, as I mentioned in the last video that I did about this scope, there was so much more to go through. We only really skimmed the surface on in that video. So, as I mentioned in the intro, what we're going to do is we're going to look at ballistic calculators, what data you need to get them to work for you, and we're going to look at how this one works in conjunction with the laser rangefinder. On the left hand side of the scope, sticking out to the side, is the rangefinder. You'll notice this little round lens at the top there. That is a red dot that you can align with these two grub screws here, and you get the Allen key in the box to adjust those. I don't think, as far as I can't find any information in the manual, but I don't think that the direction of the laser rangefinder is adjustable. We'll look at that later on, which from what I've seen isn't an issue, but we'll talk about that when we go through the menus to sort the laser rangefinder out. Let's have a look at how to set up the laser rangefinder then. Well, I've currently got the scope on my desk so that I can plug into my PC to record this. So you're not going to see the laser beam as it is in the real world, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. So there's a sequence to follow then. We're currently in daylight mode as indicated on the status bar at the bottom. What we're going to do is click through first to starlight mode, and then we go through to night mode. So we need to be in night mode. Secondly, we need to then switch on the LRF so that it starts pulsing its laser beam. So we'll switch that on. You can see that it's flashing in the screen. You can see that the little golf peg up the top's gone grey because we're too close of range, and you can see that little green box with a dot has appeared. So now we're set up, and you can see the pulses of the laser beam because we're quite close to the wall, so it's feeding back. So we're going to go into the menus then. So I press the menu button again and we go in, and you can see that the LRF still flashing, and we're going to go down to range marker align and press that, and you can see then we get the instructions. So it's telling us in black and white mode, enable the rangefinder, the blinking point is the ranging point, move the green marker to the blinking point. So you can see that the x-axis there is currently reading 702. So similar to the single shot 0, we move this box around. You can see I can move the green box around. And if we were outside aiming at something down the garden, you'd see the laser mark as a little vertical line of white light that is flashing on and off. And basically what you do is you move your X and Y coordinates. We can click to go between X and Y, and you move that green box around so that you can align it with that white mark. And then once we're in the correct position, you see there it says long press the menu key to save. So we'll long press the menu key, saved successfully. We go back to the menu, we come out of the menu, and then we can turn the LRF off with one click, and you'll see that will stop flashing. And then if we need to, we can go back into day mode. Now you can see that I've set that up. If I turn the LRF back on again, you'll see that the little green box is quite close to the reticle there. What I've found with this is that as you go up in in zoom, that the little green box doesn't stay in the same place in regards to where the laser beam is, or it doesn't seem to. So what you need to do really before you set that is you need to decide what level of zoom you're going to be normally using to check your ranges with. I've just set it as at 1 times because it's no problem for me to go back to 1 times and find the range and then zoom in after that. Okay, so that's one thing to be aware of. So switching that off again, that's the LRF setup then. It's pretty straightforward really. Let's go back into the menus then and take a look at the ballistic calculator settings. So long click brings me up. Now you can see that currently I've got the ballistic parameters set off. Obviously that was the setting that I was using when I shot the HFT course. If we switch that to on, and we get the ballistic menu. Now we can go back to the parameters and you can see in the main menu, and then if we click that again, then that will come up. Now in order to get, as I understand it, in order to get the menu options for the ballistic calculator, you need to have the current version of the firmware, which is firmware version 02, I believe, which is available for download from One Leaf site. You also need, if you want to go through the menu items in the manual, you need the current version of the manual, which is available online. They're not included in the manual that I got that comes with the box. I assume that eventually that will be updated, but for the moment you need to download the PDF from the website. So let's go through these menu items then and see what we need. Ballistic group, if I click that, you can see we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 different saving points for ballistic groups. So you can have your data for basically 7 different rifles and pellet combinations. Okay, so we'll leave it on A to start to begin with. We go down to set the ballistic coefficient, then you've got the ballistic model, the bullet or pellet weight, the muzzle velocity, your zero range, your sight height, and then you've got shooting angles, inclination, wind speed and wind angle. We're probably going to zero those. Your altitude, the air temperature when you set this up, the barometric pressure and the relative humidity. So that's all the information that we need to set in this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to gather all of that information, and then we'll come back to this menu and put all that information in there. The first thing on our list of data items to be collected then is ballistic coefficient. So what is ballistic coefficient? Well, this is as good a definition as any. It says here that in ballistics, the ballistic coefficient, or BC, of a body is a measure of its ability to overcome air resistance in flight. Now there are basically two ways of getting the ballistic coefficient that we need to enter into our ballistic calculator. The first is we can search online, we can find out what the manufacturer's quoted BC is, or we can go to one of these databases like this one provided by Hard Air magazine that has quite a comprehensive list of pellets. You can see ballistic coefficient is in this column. If we go down, we're using JSB Exact Diablos, and you can see there that they quote the ballistic coefficient as 0.19. Now, as I understand it, the larger that number, the better the flight of the pellet through the air. So for example, a bullet will have a much higher BC than that. So we can take that value, but in my experience of well, probably some may say wasting hours mucking around with ballistic software, I've found that you can save yourself a lot of heartache calculating the BC for yourself, and it really isn't that difficult. So that's what we're going to do now. So here we are out in my range, the farthest back that I can get to check what our point of impact is at this range, or the pellet drop that is, so that we can use that figure for working out our ballistic coefficient for our pellets. So I've just measured the distance to the target. We are 51 yards away, so a little over twice my zero range. And what I'm going to do, I've got the FX chrono set up as well, so that we can get our chrono readings at the same time with these pellets, so we know that the barrel, the muzzle velocity is actually in line with the actual pellets that we've shot. So I'm going to put a few pellets down there until I get a reasonable, I don't expect to get a perfectly straight line, but a reasonably close group of pellets so that we can take an average for the drop. And I'll be recording this through the NV400 as well. So off we go then. Right, so that's the shots taken. We'll grab the target and we need to work out what the average millimetre pellet drop was. Here we have the target that I used then for our point of impact test out at 51 yards on the garden range. You can see the various group of shots there. Bit more consistency in the middle. Anyway, I took a measurement for all of those shots and then took an average. And the average actually has come out at 92 millimeters, which is right in the center of that little cluster of shots there. So that's probably a pretty good result and a good value to use. So we're going to go forward using a drop of minus 92 millimeters at 51 yards. So now we know what our pellet drop is at 51 yards. We also know what our muzzle velocity was at the time that we shot those pellets, because we measured it with the chrono. So now we need something to crunch the numbers and come up with a ballistic coefficient for us. So I use this program EasyBC, which is from this website here, gpc.photosoft.co.uk. I'll put a link to that in the description. While you're here, you might also want to download Mero, which is an updated and constantly updated newer version of a program like Airgun, and I'll be using this to verify whether our ballistic coefficient that we calculate is accurate or not. But for now, we'll go to the EasyBC page. You see that you can download this for Mac, for Linux and for Windows, and also it's available as an app for Android phones. So we're going to download the Windows version, and once the program is downloaded, we will then install that. Now that when you download either Mero or EasyBC and you try and install it, you will get this, you may get this blue box come up, and this is Windows being ultra protective. It doesn't recognize this company as a software provider. So if you just click on that more info, there you go, it says it's an unknown publisher. You can just click on the run anyway, and it will install. So we'll let that install, and I'll come back when it's up and running. So here we have EasyBC open alongside a photograph of the shot string from the shots we took when we determined our point of impact at the target at 51 yards, and you can see average speed 766 feet per second, which has gone in there. Our zero range is 25 yards, our target range was 51 yards, and our point of impact at the target was minus 92 millimeters. Also, you'll notice at the bottom here the environmental factors, which are quite important. Now, luckily, when you use the FX Chrono and the FX app, it determines whereabouts you are, your location, and it records the local weather at the time. So we can take that straight from there. 19.3 degrees, 29.9, we need to put a 1 in there, 29.91 inches of mercury and 60% humidity. Now, if you don't have this app and yet that gives you that information, you can quite easily get the temperature, pressure and the relative humidity from a weather app on your phone or something like that, or go online, or check the weather report from your local airfield or airport as well, because they are updating that information quite regularly. So you'll notice here then the only information that we're missing is the sight height. We need the sight height. Now let's talk a little bit about sight height, shall we? Now, if you've seen anybody online, either on YouTube or in the forums, talk about sight height or measure sight height, I can guarantee that 99% of the times you will see them try and get a ruler and measure from the centre of the barrel to the centre of the objective lens where the scope is positioned. Now, I don't think that's right. Let me ask you a question. Where does the ballistics of our pellet begin? You know, where do the effects of ballistics and drag and everything on the pellet begin? It's not at that point there, is it? It's that point there, right on the muzzle, when the pellet leaves the muzzle of the barrel. So I have it on good authority from a trusted source that I've no reason to doubt, knows a lot more about shooting and things than me, that this is where we need to measure our sight height from. So how do we do that, you ask? We can't use a ruler there. So I'm going to show you what's called the tin foil method for measuring, for what I believe is the correct way to measure the sight height on your rifle. You'll need a bit of tin foil big enough to go over the objective lens. You'll need a ruler to measure your results. You'll need an elastic band to hold the tin foil on, and you will need a toothpick or a cocktail stick to make a hole in the tin foil. So first you wrap the tin foil around the objective lens then, and then you use the elastic band to secure it so it doesn't slide off when you point the rifle downwards to make your shot. Then you take your cocktail stick and you make a tiny hole in the tin foil right in the centre of the objective lens. You'll then need to set up a target with a horizontal line and set your scope to minimum focus and minimum magnification. Then look through the scope and line up your horizontal part of your reticle with the line on the target and take a shot, keeping the muzzle as close to the target as you can. Measure the pellet drop and you have your true sight height. And we're back. And we now know that the correct sight height for our setup is exactly 50 millimeters. So we can enter that. One thing that I haven't mentioned on here is, which is on our list, which is the ballistic model. We need to select the ballistic model here. Now normally I'm suspecting on our scope it will be GA, which is the ballistic model for round nose Diablo pellets, but there is an updated version that sometimes, well, tends to be a little bit more accurate here, which is GA version 2, so that's what I use. Okay, so we've put all of our data in, and this has given us a ballistic coefficient of 0.0157, bit different to our 0.019 that we had on the database. So we're going to use this 0.0157 and check it to see how accurate it is, along with all this other data in the Mero application. So that's what we're going to do next. So now you can see we've entered all our data. We've got the range down to 51 yards, and you'll notice that the point of impact millimeters at 51 yards is -92, which is correct because that's what we experienced. So obviously that ballistic coefficient and this sight height are doing their job. Now remember this on the right here, this was what I've realized in practice, the actual point of impact drops at the different ranges. So let's go through and compare what we found actually shooting the rifle compared to what this Mero, this ballistic calculator, has come up with. So starting at 15 yards then, we found I measured a drop of 9 millimeters, and at 15 yards here it's saying 19, so we're about, oh sorry, looking at the wrong 9, 15 here it's saying 6, so we're about 3 mil out there. Moving on to 20, I got 2 mil, and 20 saying 1 mil, so we're 1 millimeter out. 30 yards, a 6 millimeter drop, and this is saying a 5 millimeter drop, so we're only 1 millimeter difference there. 35 yards, 16 millimeters, and here 15 millimeters. 40 yards, 31 millimeters, and here it's saying 32, and at 45 yards 53 millimeters, and it's saying here 55. So I think you can see by using the tin foil method to work out the sight height, and by using the point of impact method with your chrono to work out your BC, you're getting a very accurate calculation here through this ballistic calculator compared to what we found in practice actually shooting the rifle. So now what we want to do, now we know that this data is fairly accurate in relation to what the rifle does, is we want to go back and enter this into the scope. Here we are back in the scope menu then, in the ballistic calculator settings. We're going to transfer, where I've transferred all the data that we've collected. Just to go through it, we're still in ballistic group 8. Ballistic coefficient, I've had to round that up to 3 decimal points, so I've made 0.0157 up to 0.016. Ballistic models, it doesn't have an option for GA, which is the round nose Diablo pellet, which is a bit strange, as you know, these scopes are getting a lot of use on air guns. I'll have to ask about that, but what they do say is if you're unsure about which model to use G1, so I've just set it to G1. Bullet weight then 8.44 grains. Our initial feet per second, muzzle velocity 766 feet per second, zero range 25 yards. Our sight height was 50 millimeters? Yeah, so that converts to 1.968 inches, so I've rounded that up to 1.97. Shooting angle 0, wind speed's at the minimum. You can't put a 0 wind speed, the minimum you can put in is 0.1, but I'm assuming because there's no wind angle on it, it's not going to make much of a difference. The altitude of where I was shooting, which I found online on a topographical map, because I'm quite close to the river in the village, not that high up, so only 32 feet for me. The temperature, that was 66.7 degrees, so I've rounded that up to 67, and barometric pressure was 29.91, so I put in 29.9, and finally relative humidity 60%. So that's all the data then to get this going. So if we come out the menus, we'll move on and see what it looks like, hopefully through the scope. So what I've had to do to test this then, because I need to be near the computer so I can run the HDMI converter so you can see what's in the eyepiece. I've had to find an extension lead for a USB so that I can have my HDMI converter still plugged in and be far enough away from the computer. So I'm aiming out of the office door through to the room across the corridor, and I put a target on the back of the chair there. So what we're going to do is hit the LRF and then see what happens. So the LRF's given us 8.2 yards. Turn that off and you can see there the green aiming marker, the holdover. So what we can do now is zoom in, and as we zoom in you should see the holdover marker drop down the reticle. Go in again and you can see there that the aiming point is just below 2 mil dots on that reticle, which is exactly the same, near enough, as the holdover that we found in practice shooting at a horizontal line 8 yards away out in the garden range. So that all works pretty well then. Seems a bit of a success. We'll move on then. Okay, let's wrap this up then by checking the accuracy of the LRF with some known distances. Now that planter that I'm aiming at there is 16.8 yards away, so we're going to zip that first. And that's saying 18.8. Let's try that again. 18.8 yards, that's 2 yards over. So there's a +2 on that. Right, this tree at the back here, that is 32.3 yards away. And that's given us 35.1. And then finally the shed at the back of the garden, that's 40 metres, and that's given us 43.1. so this LRF is overranging by quite a bit, which is obviously going to affect the aim point that it gives us for shooting targets. But we'll put some targets out and we'll have a go and see how far it's off. Right, I've put some targets out. Then we've got a pig, which is a 15mm. We've got squirrel, 25mm, and then we've got a 35mm up the end there. The only distance that I know, let's turn the rangefinder off. The only distance I know is that 35mm is in line with the shed, so that should be exactly 40 metres. The other two I've just set out, I don't know the distances at all. Now we know the LRF looks like it's overranging a bit. Normally you'd expect a laser rangefinder to be accurate within ±1 yard. But it looks like this is overreading a little bit more than that, depending on the distance. So let's see what we get with it anyway. Let's range this pig. Right, so that's done. We're going to zoom in a bit. And we're going to focus a bit. Focus it in. See if we can hit that with that green mark. So we're aiming the green mark right in the centre of the kill. Safety off. Well, that one worked. Right, next is the squirrel. Focusing on that. I want to go back to 1 times, so as I'm accurate with me lasing. Oh, what's happening with this? Got to remember, left is down, right is up. Right, lays the squirrel. So that's saying 29 yards. Zoom in. Put the aiming mark right in the middle of the squirrel, and it'd be an idea to load the rifle, wouldn't it? So put the aiming mark in the centre of the squirrel. And we have a kill. Okay. And last but not least, I'm going to laze that. Go back to 1 times. Laze the target. Oh, 1 times. Right, that's saying 42 now. When I did the shed before, let's laze the shed again. That's saying 42 now. Might be the light interfering. The sun's coming out and then it's going in. It might be the light interfering with the laser. Right, so that's 42 then. We'll zoom in. Use that kill zone right in the middle of the target. Well, it might be lasing the distances wrong, but it's getting the aim points right. So that's a weird one, that. Anyway, that's a practical demonstration of the holdover point. So I think with that we're done. Okay, let's wrap this up then. I guess the only thing that we really need to talk about is the apparent overranging for the LRF. Now, what I did is I've got a handheld LRF. This is an LRF 400 by Hawk. All of these LRFs, as I think I mentioned, they're all advertised as being accurate within plus or minus 1 yard. This wasn't perfectly accurate as to the tape measure. I mean, who knows, perhaps my tape measure shrunk. But it wasn't as overranging consistently, or apparently overranging as consistently as the NV400. But that being said, I mean, it didn't seem to affect the accuracy of the holdover aim points that were being calculated by the ballistic calculator. I mean, you saw the targets, they all went down. Now, I carried on shooting afterwards, and I was shooting at the wrap target in my backstop. And that's a 15mm kill zone. Now, at that range, if there was a 2 yard difference in the range used, I looked on the ballistic calculator and that was a difference in drop of 8mm, which would suggest that you know, that if the LRF was calculating the distance wrong, the pellet should have dropped by 8mm, and it would have hit the bottom below the kill zone and wouldn't have gone straight through the centre at the right level. So I don't know what's going on. I will, you know, get back to One Leaf and discuss it and see, you know, see what's what with it. But so, you know, whatever the LRF is reporting on the screen, the ballistic calculator seems to be working correctly. I'm going to do some further testing with it, put some targets out, paper targets out, and see where the pellets are actually going. You know, aim at some horizontal lines and stuff, and see for certain. But at the moment, I've got no concerns that you know, that it's that inaccurate. I mean, you've seen the results for yourself. So that's that then. Moving on then about the videos. I mean, I just got a comment come in about somebody suggesting that I should make my videos shorter. You know, I'm very conscious that some of these videos get quite long, but the thing is, you've got to cover what you've got to cover. I mean, in this video, I had I've had to chop out, you know, when I sat down to start editing it before you know, I got to record this bit. I chopped out a 10-minute segment where I was talking about the controls because I knew it was going to make the video so too long. I don't really want to start making videos in two parts because I don't think that will work. But I mean, let me know what you think in the comments. So anyway, in order not to drag this one on anymore, I hope you found that interesting. If you want to see some more, then you know what to do. But for now, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.